Hello there, 7th graders, and welcome to this E-Day for Social Studies. This is Mr. Hughes, and hopefully you can read the instructions on the document I posted. This is the presentation or the screencast, and I'm going to go through this very quickly, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. Actually, I'm telling you, do not write everything down, but you do need to write a few things down that interest you in particular. So, I'm calling this Mummies and Pyramids and Tombs, oh my. So part of the reason I'm doing this way is the more I read about ancient Egypt and their beliefs about afterlife and those kinds of things, I get more and more confused because some things that I thought I knew I'm not understanding as well, or I'm getting different information, and I don't know if that's because there's new information out that I don't know about or that has been altered due to new research or new discoveries. So what I'm going to have you do is pick some things that interest you and see what you can find. So I've always heard this called the next life. So this could be heaven, this could be the underworld, this could be a lot of different things that they might call it or we might call it, but this is where people went after they died. They believe that once you got there, you could enjoy a lot of the same things, many of the same things that we could do here on Earth, or that we could enjoy on Earth. They also believe that they, just like we have a kind of a spiritual body or a soul and a physical body, they kind of had that thought too. So there was the Ka and the Ba, and this is where I'm starting to get a little bit unsure because I'm getting different explanations of what these two things are. A very simple thing I read a long time ago said that the Ka is the soul, the Ba is the body. They separate upon birth, and then part of the goal of the afterlife is to reunite those two things. Now in what I'm reading, I'm not so sure if that's how I understand it. So I'm curious, as you guys, if this is one of the things that you choose to research, what you think, what you find out, and maybe you can understand it better than I can. Some of these pictures that are on this slide, there's a bed, there's some sandals, and then a game. All of these, a number of years ago, were at the Children's Museum when they had a King Tut exhibit, and it's very interesting. So, like I was just saying, one way I've understood this is for the person's soul and body and everything to get to the next life, the soul has to find the body, so the Ka has to find the Ba, and then that rejoining of the two is the Ak. And that was kind of eternal life. But the key to this is that the soul has to be able to recognize the body, and that's why mummification was important. Now, technically, a mummy is just a dead body protected from decay. Now, we tend to think of all mummies as being Egyptian. Many cultures had mummies, not just the Egyptians. And experts today think that the first Egyptian mummies were probably mummified accidentally. They buried them in the sand, it's very dry, it's very hot, and the bodies dried out. For one reason or another, they discovered this and saw that the bodies were very well preserved. And who knows, that may have led to their belief of, well, the people are still together, so maybe in this other kind of realm that they are doing the same kinds of things that they would do on Earth. They think that there's probably over 70 million Egyptian mummies made, and they've found about 1 million plus they found animal mummies, so they were even mummifying some of their animals, so that could be something to look up too. When they mummified a body, it was done by a team of priests. This was a very, I guess, for lack of a better term, religious kind of thing, a very spiritual thing. They believed that the god Anubis was watching over this as it was done, so they were very particular and very meticulous in doing this, especially for the most important people in society, for example, the pharaoh. Now, this picture that you're seeing right here, you've got the priest and the mummy, and then notice the canopic jars. So those are the internal organs, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But that's a picture of Anubis up on the upper right. The first thing they did was remove the organs because these major organs had so much moisture in them that would rot the body from the inside. So they removed the lungs, the intestines, the stomach, and the liver. Those are all pulled out and put in canopic jars, so that those things could kind of get mummified separately as internal organs, and they'd be buried, and I'm going to go back here, buried in the same tomb as the body, but notice they're in separate jars, and each jar had like the baboon, the falcon, the jackal, and the human. Those were different Egyptian gods for each of the different organs. The heart was left in the body because in their belief system, when this person is kind of going through the journey to go to the next life, that heart was needed. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. They believed that the heart was the center of intelligence, and that was kind of their life force. So the brain, they thought, was trash. That was garbage. They'd pull it out through the nose. You know, that always sounds great. They've got the hook. They'd pull it out. They'd put a chemical in there and kind of liquefy it a little bit and pull that out. But they thought that was like just mucus or something like that. So that was not needed. So to them, your heart is where you thought, you reasoned, everything of importance was in your heart. And I always wonder, you know, we say that if we've memorized something, we've learned it by heart. I wonder if that is kind of from that. So then the body is prepared. They wash it. They rub it with oil and spices. So think about, you may know something about the Middle Eastern funeral rites, like with, you know, the day after, or the third day after Jesus was crucified, they're going back to prepare the body for burial because they couldn't do it because of Sabbath and Passover. So they were going to go prepare the body, and that's similar a little bit to this. They covered it in natron, which is a kind of a salt, like a big salt, like you might put on the sidewalk in winter or in your water softener, something like that. And that really dried the body out, you know, very quickly, actually, and very completely, I should say. They even put some inside the body, like in little pockets, and they left the body like that for 40 days. They had these big tents. And remember, this is Egypt, so it's dry anyway, and arid, and very hot. And so the bodies would dry out. The packet they put in the body always reminds me of the stuff like you get when you buy a new pair of shoes, or it's in beef jerky, those little packets that say do not eat. And that keeps the moisture away from whatever it is you're trying to protect. So the body stays like that for 40 days. Then they wrap it up. These linen cloths that they would soak in resin, which once it dries, it's kind of like, think of like maple syrup or something like that. Once it dries, it kind of makes a hard shell. It's like that chocolate ice cream coating you can put on that magic shell stuff. Then that hardens, and they would put a mask of the face over the face over the face on top of the strips. Once again, remember, they have to have that, the soul has to find the body. So then they put it in a case. This too would have a painting of the person's face, and they decorate it with paintings of like what they thought would happen in the next life, meeting the God. There'd be prayers and spells written on it, and this was very elaborate. Now, there were different levels. My understanding is there's different levels of the what kind of funeral you could have. Some people may have just gotten dried out and wrapped up. Some people may have had the case and the mask and the wrappings. So depending on how wealthy you were, how important you were, that stuff would all vary. They would put amulets within the wrappings, kind of like magic charms, protection, statues of the gods, different symbols. The Eye of Horus was a big one for protecting the body, protecting the soul or whatever as they're going through to the next life. They found certain ones always over the heart, certain ones over different body parts. They have these big processions, and you can kind of see in this picture there's one that's kind of an authentic wall drawing or mural drawing of it, and then the other one more of a modern depiction of it. But it was like on kind of like a sled, and they would pull it through, and the more people the better. They had all kinds of different items, because a lot of these people, they would bury stuff in the tomb that they would need in, quote, the next life. So food, furniture, clothing, toys, statues, other kinds of things that we'll talk about later on. The more people the better, the more crying the better. They would be chanting things, they'd be praying things, they might even be singing things. They always thought that the dead bodies, the souls, went to the west. And you can imagine why that would be. The sun sets in the west, that's where things go to die, and this was the destination of the dead. So most Egyptians were on the west side of the Nile, and their heads were facing west. So that's a big thing to them, the west. Okay, so here are some things you might want to research. There's a ceremony called the opening of the mouth ceremony. Now remember, the body's dead. It's, it's been mummified for 40 days. It's been wrapped up, etc. But they're kind of like, they have to do this little magic spell almost, so that in the next life, the mummy can open its mouth. So it can talk, it can breathe, it can eat. And there's different tools and different episodes. Very complicated, very intense. And once again, I don't think that this was to every single person, but it was for the wealthy, etc. Now notice this thing right here. This always reminds me of something we talked about with Mesopotamia. Some of you are probably already saying, oh yeah, that looks like the Code of Hammurabi. Very similar to that, and I'm not sure exactly what this is, but it sure looks like the Code of Hammurabi. It's not that, but that's what it looks like. So then there's something else called the Book of the Dead. I always think of this as like the guidebook. So if you ever go to Disney World, they have these guidebooks. Like, oh, go to this ride at this time, go stay at this place, get a fast pass here, all this kind of stuff. And this Book of the Dead was kind of these writings that kind of guided them through this, what they thought was going to happen. So it has prayers, it has hymns, it has spells, even has maps. And this is where we learn a lot of what was going on with their belief system. Then the last thing is the weighing of the heart. So you get to this point, and like this is almost like a jury. You've got many different of the gods sitting up here. You've got Thoth, or Thoth, T-H-O-T-H, the god who's writing everything down. Here's Anubis again. This is one of these would be the person that's being judged. This is like their soul. And then notice their heart is here. The feather of truth is here. And they would see if that balanced out. Now, clearly, this is not happening. This is what they thought would happen. So this weighing of the heart didn't really occur, but they thought it was occurring. And then this over here, this beast, the devourer, if your heart weighed more than the feather of truth, your heart got eaten by this thing, and you did not go on to the next life. So that is a very quick view of the ancient Egyptian beliefs and funeral practices. Feel free to watch this again or go to different parts. Hopefully you were pausing it if you needed to. But now just follow the instructions on that paper. And if you have any questions, be sure to contact me through Edmodo, and I will be responding during that time from noon to 3 on Tuesday. So hopefully this made some sense. This is all experimental, so thanks for listening, and I will see you guys later.